but I'm here to talk to you guys about Tourette syndrome. But before I start, I just want to say thank you guys so much for letting me come and talk here today. I actually had these teachers back when I was in 5th grade, and it was a year that I'll never forget. And I'm just telling you guys, you are so lucky. You are so lucky to have these teachers, and trust me, you might not like having homework, you might not like going to school, but this'll help. Now, I'm here to talk to you guys about Tourette syndrome. Now, what Tourette syndrome is it's a medical condition. Now, do any of you guys know of anything else that is a medical condition? Anyone have any ideas? Yeah.
Cancer?
That is a medical condition. Yeah. Yes, I think that is. Some other things are things such as asthma or things like diabetes, and something also that is a medical condition is something that I have, which is Tourette syndrome. Now, one thing that we have to make sure that we do is we should never make fun of anyone for being different or for having a medical condition that they can't control. Now, have you guys noticed anything that I'm doing that might be strange or different or something you don't usually see? Anyone notice anything that I'm noticing? Yeah.
You do that thing with your hand?
Yes, I am. One of the things that I'm doing, you might notice I'm turning my head funny or I'm chomping my teeth. These are all things called tics. Now, have any of you guys ever heard of this word up top, T-I-C-K? Yeah, do you know what it is?
Speak up, because there's a lot of noise in the hall.
Alright.
It's like something in your body that you can't control that makes you move.
That is actually the bottom one. Now, the top one here is this bug. And that's just nasty. Bugs are disgusting. But tics are, this is the big dictionary definition, full of big words that I barely understand. The dictionary definition of this is an involuntary, sudden, rapid, reoccurrent, stereotyped motor or vocal involvement. Now, that might be over some of our heads. It's over my head. I don't know what half of those words mean. All you really need to know that a tic is a tic is a movement or sound that your body makes that it can't control. Now, as you're seeing, I'm ticking. You're seeing I'm making some noises and I'm making some movements. Those are the two types of tics. The two types of tics are motor tics, which are the movements you're seeing me do, and the vocal tics, which are the sounds you guys might hear me make. Now, you guys might think, well, what is it like to have a tic? A tic is like needing to sneeze or needing to blink. It takes a lot of energy to stop. And if you guys all went like this and held your eyelids open, you would feel a burning sensation after a while, and that's because you need to blink. You just have to, and it's hard to not blink, and that's why it takes a lot of energy to stop. Now, once tics are classified as motor or vocal, those are the big umbrella over all of the tics. Then it gets classified into what are called simple tics or what are called complex tics. Now, what a simple tic is a simple tic doesn't take as many muscles and it's not as noticeable. Some of my simple tics are I'll blink my eyes a lot, and sometimes I might make my hands into a fist and clench my muscles a lot. That is a simple motor tic. Now, also, make sure, if you go home today and you start blinking your eyes in the mirror, you do not have Tourette syndrome. Now, also, the complex motor tics are things that you're seeing me doing, like drumming my hands a lot or the way I'm moving my head. Now, these things are a lot more noticeable, like you guys saw them right away that I was drumming or things like that, and those are complex. They use a lot of muscles. Then we get into the vocal tics. Vocal tics, you're going to notice a lot more, even if they're simple, because you can hear them. And what a simple vocal tic is, again, it's not as noticeable. Like, have you guys ever heard someone clearing their throat a lot going, and if you thought that, wow, that's pretty annoying, but we also need to know, maybe they're not doing it to bother us. Maybe they've got a cold, or maybe they got something stuck in their throat, and we need to make sure that we don't do anything about it. Then we get into the complex vocal tics. These things can be very noticeable and sometimes can be really bad when you're with people that don't know you. Now, sometimes when people have complex vocal tics, sometimes they say phrases like, oh boy, or I've got it. Now, with me, With me, I have complex vocal tics in a form of what is called coprolalia. Now, that is a really big word, and it's hard to say, but all that it means is that sometimes you guys might hear me swear or say things that aren't usually nice things to say, and I say these because I have those forms of tics, and one, they're not fun to have, and two, I would never say anything like that, so that is why having these tics isn't that great. Then we get into things called tics of the mind. Now, tics of the mind are things that you think or happen in your brain. Ooh, scary. And what they can be is, if you're thinking something, usually, you know how you guys close your lockers and you turn it to make sure no one opens your locker again and steals anything? Well, when you turn your lock, you might just turn it once because one is enough. But someone that has tics of the mind might have to turn the lock on their locker for a random number like 8 times, and they don't know why. It's not because they feel that someone's going to steal something, it's just because they feel they have to. Now, some random facts about Tourette syndrome is that Tourette syndrome, the symptoms of it, which the symptoms of it are pretty simple, it's just having tics. Symptoms of it appear usually between the ages of 5 and 7, and almost always appear before you turn 18. Now, in order to be diagnosed with Tourette syndrome, someone would have to have had at least one motor tic and one vocal tic for at least 1 year. And boys have Tourette syndrome 3 times more than girls, and tics wax and wane, and that means that they get better and they get worse. Now, something that's pretty important is that you know is that Tourette syndrome is not contagious. Like, if I came over here, I gave Max a high five, he wouldn't get Tourette syndrome because he got germs from me. Because, especially with Tourette syndrome, people have done nothing wrong to get it. They didn't get it from anyone else, or they didn't say something bad about someone, so, oh, you said something bad, you have Tourette's. No, that's not how it works. But they also don't know what causes it, so they don't know why people get it. Now, Tourette syndrome is a neurobiological disorder. That is a big one. Wow. All that means is that Tourette syndrome, it'll happen in your brain. And what they think causes Tourette's is that your body has chemicals that your brain sends out to tell you to raise your hand, or that'll tell you to talk. And with Tourette syndrome, they think that these chemicals will what are called misfire, or just shoot at random, which is what causes me or someone else with Tourette syndrome to make random movements or make sounds. Now, have you guys ever heard of the word inherited? Do any of you know what you guys have inherited from your parents? Anyone? Yeah. Have you inherited anything?
Like your culture?
Yes, you have. Any other inherited traits? Yeah.
Oh, traits?
Yeah.
Well, I know I inherited my mom's eyes.
Yeah. Like inheriting eye color. Or sometimes you can inherit if your hair is curly or straight or wavy. Now, something that I know I have inherited is Tourette syndrome. Someone in my family sometime had Tourette's, and that got passed down to me. And Tourette syndrome, if someone that has it, they're born with it. They don't catch it from a bug, or they don't get it, especially since it's not contagious. They're born with it, and Tourette syndrome is also a lifelong disorder. Meaning, you're going to have it for your whole life, but it can get better, and it might get worse. Now, some things can make Tourette syndrome worse. Like if you're stressed, I know when I get stressed, it's usually before a test, and that makes my tics a lot worse. And sometimes when I'm not feeling that great, when I'm sick, or when I'm tired, my tics get worse also. Now, we know that people with Tourette syndrome have done absolutely nothing wrong to get it. You can't get it from anyone else. Now, can anyone tell me why having Tourette syndrome would be bad? Yeah.
Maybe because when you're having a tic and like you swear, some people may like think that you're like a bad person or something like that.
Yeah, it could be bad in public. That is a great idea. Yes.
You may like look weird when you do something and you might get bullied for it.
Yeah, that is also some things that might happen. Now, like some of you guys said, it could be embarrassing. It can be uncomfortable. and it can interfere with everyday life. Now, something that I do on usually a daily basis is I usually read a lot. And what Tourette syndrome does is it'll make it harder for me to read. And that brings me to my activity. Now, I need one volunteer from the audience. Yeah, come on. Now, I will have to say, I know you guys are on a break, but this does require reading. Alright, now, you are going to have the honor of having Tourette syndrome while reading a random paragraph. So you're going to read out loud, and I'm going to act like you're Tourette syndrome. Alright, could you read from here to here? Don't worry, you're not being graded. Right. What? No, read from here to here, and just read so everyone can hear you. I'm going to act like you're Tourette syndrome.
Read out loud.
Turned up, Mr.
Hey.
Louder.
Hey. Yeah, could you read a little louder? I'm going to act like you're Ticks.
When he turned up, Mr. Dillon has dressed.
Oh my God, what's that?
Quiet night at home. Jill said, sweet pants.
Hey, what are you doing? Don't ask me, I'm just Tourette's.
Then he changed his clothes and went whipping out of the house. Ahead of them, the tan come back, cut off another.
Hey! 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 What?
Wherever he's going, he seems to be in a hurry.
Hey, bud.
At it.
I'm just your Tourette's, man.
It's out working off his bad news or bad driving.
Alright. Thank you for having the honor of having Tourette's. Now that we know that Tourette syndrome can be really, really difficult to do stuff that you're just normally doing, you can probably tell. Was it tough to read when I was just bothering you and going, hey, what are you doing? It can be very distracting. Now, we know that people with Tourette syndrome are pretty much the same as all of us, but they just have different things that show. Now, what can we do to help people, not only with Tourette syndrome, but differences in general? Yeah. Yeah.
You can like be nice to them and help them and stuff.
Yeah, being nice to people is a great idea. Anyone else know how we can help? Yeah.
Just ignore if they do something.
That is another great way to go. Now, things that I can't stress enough are that we should never make fun of anyone for any of their differences, and we should just let them live their lives the way that we want to live ours. Now, one thing that actually happened to me where, as Max said, we should just ignore the things they're doing, when people weren't exactly ignoring what it was happening to me, was I am on the Solon Middle School cross-country team, and I was at a race over in Boardman, and that's by Youngstown, and it was about by the start of the race, and the two adults that were the referees, they were being not very nice at all, and they were bullying me, and they were telling me to shut up. And one thing that I noticed was that my teammates, who we had told about my Tourette's earlier in the season, was they had stood up for me, and that's not that easy to do. They had told the people that were bullying me, hey, he's got Tourette's, he can't help it. And I was honored that my teammates would stand up for me, and I realized that it's not that tough to be nice or to help someone, so we should all do it. Now, when I'm in public and there are people that don't know me and they don't know that I have Tourette's, I hand out cards, and you all should have gotten a card, and they say these words on them. They say, why do I act this way? Because I can't control it. I have Tourette syndrome, medical condition. It causes me to make loud sounds, have twitches, and say things I don't mean. I can't help it more than you can stop a sneeze or a cough. I'm sorry if it bothers you, it bothers me more. And I pass these things out when I'll go to a restaurant or when I go to a movie theater, because if you think about it, and you're in a quiet movie theater and you're making noises, and people are going to think, what is happening? And as long as they know that you have Tourette syndrome, usually they're going to say, oh, no big deal. And that's usually the response that I get when I hand those cards out. Now, I know that I've told you guys a lot. Can you guys tell me some of the things that you've learned about Tourette syndrome today? Yeah.
It's a real horrible thing that happens to
Yeah, it is not that great to have. Yeah. Yes.
It's difficult to live with.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
It's inherited.
That is very true. Yes, it is an inherited disease. Yeah.
When you hear it or whatever, just like ignore it instead of just making a big deal about it.
Yeah, make sure that you ignore people's differences. That is very true. Yeah, reviewing.
It can sometimes hurt other people's feelings.
Yes, that is very true. And that is something that people with Tourette syndrome don't always like because they would never say things like that. Now, I just want to say again, thank you guys so much for letting me come and talk here today. I hope that you guys have learned a lot. And it was so great to be back here. Thank you guys so much. Now, do any of you guys have any questions about either my Tourette syndrome or Tourette syndrome in general? Anyone have any questions? Yeah.
Can you take like a medical medicine or anything or whatever?
Yes, there are medications that can help Tourette syndrome. And usually if you do take medications, everything helps people differently. So something that works for me might not work for the other people. Anyone else have any other questions? Yeah.
Like if,
Alright, we'll get back to you if you remember. Yeah.
what if there was like 100 babies born, about how many would like have Tourette syndrome?
That is a great question. How many babies out of 100 would have Tourette syndrome? About 6 of the kids would have Tourette syndrome. Yeah.
What do doctors try to do if like you have
That is a great question. He asked, what do doctors try and do with people that have Tourette syndrome? And I know from personal experience that it is kind of tough to deal with it, but they'll try to put you on things to make it better or worse. They'll try to see, like, if, I don't know, stop drinking milk, and if you stop drinking milk, if your tics get better, if tics get worse. They try things like, they try to experiment and see if it's caused by something or if it's just Tourette syndrome. Yeah.
you have to go to the doctor?
I'm sorry,
You have to go to the doctor?
That is a great question. It was, do I have to go to the doctor a lot? And that depends. For Tourette syndrome, no. For me being clumsy and breaking bones, yes. Yeah,
Oh, I was just saying, I'm clumsy too.
I can see that. Yeah. Yeah.
Are you allowed to have pets if you have Tourette syndrome?
That is a great question. I do have 2 dogs at home. Needless to say, they bark more than I do. Sometimes, if it's dinner time. But yes, I am allowed to have pets. Anyone else? Yeah.
There was somebody in art class, and we doing something weird, but we know that it can happen.
That is a great question. And the question was, if there was someone in your class that you've been with them for a year, would you know if they had Tourette syndrome or not? And it would depend if they had simple vocal tics, simple motor tics, or complex tics, because sometimes you'd notice them more and sometimes you wouldn't. So I guess it just varies by person. Yeah, did you remember?
Yeah, how is Tourette syndrome starting this?
That is a great question. That is a great question. It was, how does Tourette syndrome start in the first place, like from the family member you have inherited? No idea. Yeah.
Were there any famous people with Tourette syndrome?
That is a good question. He asked if there were a lot of famous people that have had Tourette syndrome. I don't know if any of you guys watch soccer, but the U.S. goalie, Tim Howard, for the U.S. soccer team has Tourette syndrome. And that's all I know. Yeah. That is a great observation. That is very true. It was the person on American Idol has Tourette syndrome, but you don't usually notice it when they sing. And why they think that happens is, like I told you guys earlier, Tourette syndrome happens in the brain. And when you're focused on doing something like singing or like playing an instrument, for example, your brain will focus on that one thing and not focus on ticking as much, other than reading. Anyone else? Yeah. That is a great question. The question was, can Tourette syndrome hurt someone that has it? And it can. Like, I've actually, when I tick with my neck, my head's actually gotten stuck in weird positions. But it depends on what kind of tics the person has. Yeah.
To get Tourette syndrome, does one of your family members have to have it first?
Usually one of your family members will have had it first. The question was, in order to have Tourette's, does one of your family members have to have it? In my family, I actually don't know anyone that had a case anywhere near like what I do, but we don't really know that deep into our family history also. Yeah.
With Tourette syndrome, do you have to like have someone on both sides of the family? With Tourette syndrome, like if you have blue eyes, you have to have someone on both sides of the family with blue eyes.
Well, Tourette syndrome, like a lot of other things that you've inherited, can show up. It can skip generations. That was a good question. Do you have to have two people on each side of the family? But I can't really answer that because I don't know. Anyone else? Yeah.
Do people with Tourette syndrome ever have to go to emergency hospital facility?
That is a good question. Do people with Tourette syndrome have to go to the emergency room or things like that for tics? I don't know. I mean, I'm betting that there are people that do, but I haven't, but I also don't know. Yeah.
If like you have more more disease than Tourette?
That is an excellent question. The question was, can you have other diseases other than Tourette syndrome? And usually people that have Tourette syndrome have more than one type of disease that have it. Like, people could have ADHD or OCD, and those are diseases that are very well linked to Tourette syndrome. Anyone else? Yeah.
At school, do you have to like if you have Tourette syndrome, do you have to get extra help?
That is a great question. The question was, do you have to get extra help in school if you have Tourette syndrome? And I sometimes, like when I'm taking tests, it's not always help for me, but it's also help for everyone else. That I like to go in a separate room. Oh, not that being said, because I like to, one, be alone so I can tick freely when I'm taking a test, and two, so I don't disrupt everyone else who's thinking about the answers. But also, one thing that we made sure we did this year, because this is actually the first year that I've been in school with Tourette syndrome, because my symptoms just got worse this year. We made sure that we gave a presentation to all of my classmates on the first day of school, so that they all knew and that they would have no problem with it. Yeah, anyone else? Yeah.
If you have Tourette syndrome, what kind of hold it in like at school? Like how long does it take?
That is a great question. I get that question a lot. The question was, if you're trying to hold in your tics, like if you're at school, how long can you hold it in? And that all depends on, one, how much you're concerned about ticking, and two, if you're really, really trying hard. And what I like to compare holding your tics in, it's kind of like having an itch at the bottom of your foot. I don't know if any of you guys have ever had one, but when you're trying to learn, and when you're trying to think about something else, and you're trying to ignore that itch, you won't scratch it, but then it'll get worse and worse and worse until all you can think about is, oh my god, that itch is really bad. Until you have to just take off your shoe and scratch it, and the only way for me to scratch my itches is by ticking. That was a great question, and I do get that one a lot. Yeah.
Can you use stuff like roller coasters?
That is a good question. Can I do things like roller coasters? I can, but I don't. Yeah.
Can the Tourette syndrome cause other diseases?
That is a good question. The question was, can Tourette syndrome cause other diseases? Again, that's one of those questions where I have no idea. Yeah.
Do you have the worst of Tourette syndrome, or can it still get worse?
That is also another great question. The question was, do I have the worst case of Tourette syndrome possible? And I don't think I do. I mean, I don't have that bad of motor tics. It can get a lot worse. And I was actually, just recently, I was in Washington, D.C. at a convention where I was trained as a youth ambassador, and they taught me how to do this speech. And it was me, I was there with 40 other people with Tourette syndrome. I will tell you, you will never be in a room louder in your life. And there were people that had it a lot worse than I do, and there were people that had it not as severely as I do. So it just varies by person. Yeah.
Do you have any other diseases for Tourette syndrome?
Good question. The question was, do I have any other diseases than Tourette syndrome? I have ADHD and dysgraphia, some of the other diseases that I have. So I don't focus well. Yeah.
Is that person that tell us that's Brad?
Yeah.
Was there a movie about him?
Great question. She asked, is this person right here, his name is Brad Cohen. There was a movie about him. It was called Front of the Class. That is actually where I got the activity that he had to suffer through. Yes.
Can other medical things make your ticks worse?
That is another great question. The question was, can having other medical disorders make your Tourette syndrome worse? Yeah. That is a great question. The question was, do I know when my tics are coming, and do I know, and also something linked to that I get a lot is, do I know what tick I'm going to do? That is a great question, and usually I know that they're coming on. That's how sometimes, but not always, I have the ability to stop myself from ticking. But a lot of the times, they just happen without my knowing, and then I know after. Yeah. Good question. If you actually read these, the question was, do all these people on this board have Tourette syndrome? You guys actually do get a chance to look at these. All of these people are pretty successful. And if you look, if you read it, it says, Brad Cohen has authored a best-selling book, yada, yada, yada. It shows all the good things that he's done, all the things that he has. And then later on, when you're reading, it says, oh yeah, and Tourette syndrome. So it's trying to show you that if you might have limitations, like these people's might have been Tourette syndrome, but if you try to overcome those limitations, you can do things that are great. Yeah.
You completely get rid of your Tourette's?
Good question. The question was, can I completely get rid of my Tourette's? And usually, Tourette syndrome stays with you for your whole life, and it is lifelong, but I don't know. Yeah.
With Tourette syndrome, do you have like other advantages with other senses? Like if you go blind, your hearing gets better?
That is a good question. She asked if, with Tourette syndrome, do my other senses heighten, like if you're blind, you can hear well. I don't hear well. My parents will call me, they can vouch for me, I don't hear well. Yeah.
Is there anything you can do, like, to stop Tourette syndrome? Like, if you're about to sneeze, you put your finger under your nose and you don't sneeze?
That is a good question. The question was, is there anything you can do to stop yourself from ticking? And other than try really hard to focus on other things and not tick, even though your tics are going to come out eventually, there usually are not things that you can do to stop from ticking. Yeah.
When you say, like, sneezers, like, if your hands go sleep, you talk and make a sound.
That is another good question. Yes, since Tourette syndrome gets worse when you're really tired, he asked if your hands fall asleep, does it stop you from ticking or does it cause you to tick more? Everyone please refrain from looking at them, they're strange. They have my family, so of course they're strange. But if your hands fall asleep, unless of course you're going to tick with your hand like I do, unless you're going to tick with your hand and it's asleep, it's not going to cause you from ticking. But when I go to sleep, like at night, I don't tick because ticks go away when you're relaxed. It's kind of like the opposite of when you're stressed. Because when you're stressed, you're ticking more because you're nervous. But when you're relaxed and you're just focused on absolutely nothing, your ticks can pretty much go away. Yeah.
What does it feel like having a hold in a tick?
That is a good question. The question was, what does it feel like to have to hold in a tick? I don't know if you had heard earlier, but it is like having an itch on the bottom of your foot, and it doesn't really feel like anything. It's just, it'll make you go crazy for about 5 seconds until you have to tip. Yeah.
How did you or has other people find out that they have Tourette's?
That is a great question, and that was something we had to learn the hard way. The question was, how do people find out that they have Tourette syndrome? Basically, they go to the doctor after they have tics for a while, and they say to the doctor, why am I doing this? And the doctor will try and find out why. And usually, when you get diagnosed with Tourette's, when someone gets diagnosed with Tourette syndrome, they're usually diagnosed with other things before that that are wrong. And because doctors don't know what causes Tourette syndrome, so they don't know what to look for to see if that's why. Yeah? That is a good question. The question was, do other kids bully me because of my Tourette syndrome? And I think that in school, and the kids that I know, they know about my Tourette syndrome, and they just let it go. They ignore my tics, and so they don't really bully me because to them it's like air conditioner noise. You're gonna have to live with it because it's there. Now, I have been bullied before, especially like the thing I had told you guys about at the cross-country meet, but also I had my teammates there who, again, the tics are like air conditioner noise. They're so used to it that they had stood up for me to try and tell everyone else. Yeah.
Sorry.
We'll get back to you. Anyone else? All right. Thank you.
Justin, I think that a national focus right now is on bullying, and I know that we're hearing stories all the time about how bad it can get. I really appreciate you coming and saying people stood up for me and it made all the difference in the world. I wish that for our students we could send them out of 5th grade really, really in their hearts understanding what that means to stand up for someone who has a disability or is being bullied. And at this point, we haven't been completely successful, but I think you coming here and being willing to share yourself with us is going to be a piece of helping them understand how that changes a person's life.
And I am also hoping that you guys realize that bullying isn't good. It doesn't make you look cool. That's why a lot of people do it, to look cool in front of their friends. It doesn't make you look good. It doesn't make anyone else look good. It's not nice to do. And if you stop and think about, should I bully this person? Because in the long run, things will come back to you. Don't bully, because it's not good. It's not good. All right, does anyone else have any other questions? Yeah. That is a really good question. The question was, when I'm ticking and someone's talking to me, can I hear what the other person is saying? It depends, again, what kind of tic you're having. Like, if I was having a motor tic or I was, like, drumming my hands, I would be able to hear you perfectly fine. But if I was making noises and I was yelling loudly, I probably wouldn't be able to hear you over my constant screaming. Yeah?
Do people with Tourette syndrome ever have seizures?
That is a great question. The question was, do people with Tourette syndrome ever have seizures? And I can't answer that one from personal experience. I have no idea. Yeah.
Yeah, actually, kids with Tourette's don't have seizures, but a lot of times the tics look like a seizure. So they're not really a seizure, though. They just look like it.
That's Mrs. Bachman. She's an expert on Tourette's, please mind. Alright, anyone else? Alright, well, thank you guys so much for letting me come in. Thank you guys. It's just an honor to be back here with the teachers I had in 5th grade. And enjoy the rest of your school day.
How do you plan to live out your ambassadorship?
The way I'm doing it right now.
Okay. Good for you.
Alright, well, thank you guys. You've been a great audience.
You can
And-
come back to 5th grade anytime you want.
So do I. I wish I could. Homework is no fun.